said that he will forever cherish the support of successive secretaries and staff of INEC nationwide. Joining us on this show right now to look back at the tenure of Professor Mahmood Yakubu as INEC chairman and what the focus of the next INEC chairman should be is Frank Tietie, a lawyer. He also touched on the issue of the certificate forgery by the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Geoffrey Nagy, who has resigned following the allegations leveled against him. Good morning, Frank Tietie, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Rufai. My pleasure.
Okay, well, very quickly, you have a lot on your plate this morning. First, a review of the tenure of Professor Mahmood Yakubu, outgone chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, expectations as to what INEC should do going forward under a new dispensation, appointment of a new INEC chairman, and then quickly, perhaps you treat that first, the exit of Geoffrey Nagy as the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, who was accused of being very innovative with his UNN, University of Nigeria, Nsukka degree, which we're told he never got, he never received, and also his NYSC certificate. And his point that he's a victim of political persecution. The same thing that we hear all over the world. You know, every politician says he's a victim. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I think we must first congratulate Mahmood Yakubu for staying as INEC chairman for a whole 10 years. But the general perception of his tenure was was disastrous by many Nigerians who expected so much because he promised so much and delivered so little. He had held sway. He has been more or less politically correct. He has been taciturn. He has been lethargic in the exercise of the immense powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission, which he held on to, and Nigerians needed to see that kind of gusto in punishing those who perpetrated electoral violence, electoral malpractices, even in his twilight in office, where there was blatant violation of campaign regulations. He just didn't say anything and didn't do anything. That scenario of the so much promise with regards to the electronic transmission of results that failed in the 2020 elections was more or less an unforgivable offense to Nigerians, and the man seems to care less. And despite all this, the fact that he got all the monies he needed, as you know, INEC enjoys a constitutional provision that says that all the monies it needed must be paid to it, directly from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And then he exercised so much independence that nobody, no authority or person, not the president, could be expected to influence it. But Professor Mahmood actually did not do well in the eyes of Nigerians. Well, Nigerians bid him well, but unfortunately, the legacy he lives with is that of huge disappointment, and in this expectation that whoever will take over from him must have a lot to cure in the eyes of Nigerians as we speak. And that's unfortunate, because when you now look at the landscape of those who can possibly replace him, you go into history. We have a long line of restricted personalities, either justices, retired justices, or academics that have been appointed as chairmen of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Some of them who have been appointed outside this category have also not done so well. The reminiscence of the days of Professor Iwu, which thrown INEC as a very controversial body. Many Nigerians are very dissatisfied with the elections. However, I think as we move on to having a new chairman, we cannot expect anything less than the standard that has been set by former President Goodluck Jonathan, when he declared that I didn't even know the person that was recommended, probably from his consultations with the National Council of State, and that and the man, when he was appointed, I'm talking about Professor Professor Tahiru Juga did not disappoint, and in the 2 elections that he conducted. So that's the kind of high standard that is required. But mind you, Professor Juga cannot be wholesomely regarded as an academic. He was a civil society personality. So when we are these academics, these non-institutional persons, when they come as INEC chairman, may not do very well. I still recall, I don't want to say that, but if you look at the history, whether it's of Whiskey or Justice Akpata, you know that semblance of that impartiality and independence that comes with their pedigree as justices, who has a way of, you know, igniting a perception of confidence in the process. So I think we should move on to a point where we think the institutional personalities should be appointed, persons who've been there, who have some kind of experience, who know the problems, not appointing outsiders who may be tainted. Okay. I hear you.
Okay, Frank Tietie, I was arguing previously that perhaps somebody from within the system who knows the terrain, who has the experience, you know, should be the next appointee to prevent a situation where people learn on the job and they create problems for Nigeria. But I wanted you to comment very quickly on Geoffrey Naji, the innovator of certificates as alleged by those he calls his political opponents, and then his resignation. And some people are now saying he should be prosecuted for perjury and forgery. Oh, what's your advice?
I think it should go beyond. It should go beyond persecution. The integrity of the Nigerian educational system was on trial in the last few days. It was on international. It was on a universal trial. The alumni of the University of Nigeria Association must have been so embarrassed that it could be so, that its certificates could be so procured and people who didn't graduate can now claim graduation. In fact, it throws a lot of systemic failures on the part of those who do verifications. Uche Naji has actually committed grievous offenses against not only the Nigerian educational system, not only against the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not only against the criminal laws of this country, but in his brazenness to also abuse the court process, he's gone beyond the famous Toronto scandal that involved Salisu Buhari. In fact, Salisu Buhari was not only prosecuted, he was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment and with an option of fine. And it was so painful that that same Salisu Buhari was appointed as a member of the governing council of University of Nigeria. Just imagine that fantastic brand, University of Nigeria. And the Minister of Innovation, transformed his ministry to the innovation of fake certificates, and then he goes to defend it. He goes to, so look, there is something important here. The Supreme Court has made a very important principle on ground that if you, operate with an illegal certificate or with either as an elected or an appointed person, whatsoever you acquired in course of the use of that certificate, you must refund. So I expect that beyond prosecution, I expect that Geoffrey Naji should prepare to return whatever he has got as a result of the use of that certificate that is now presumptuously, fake in the wake of his resignation.
Well, an investigation has not yet been instituted formally to, ascertain whether or not his certificates were false, as was done during the time of Salisu Buhari. So we're looking forward to this administration to call for an investigation into whether or not he entered or he was appointed using fake certificates. But let me ask you, do you believe, Mr. Tietie, that perhaps the Nigerian system provides an enabling environment for corrupt practices like this to happen? Because let me go back to the INEC chairman or the appointment of the INEC chairman situation, where you're talking about, let's go back to the days where we had people who had gone through the institution. In today's Nigeria, even people who were part of the institution might pose a challenge, because that's why we keep talking about electoral reform, that if there are loopholes in the law or there are no tight legal framework for us to deter, or for there to be a deterrent to acts like this, we'll continue to see it. As long as the person who is appointed is from the same Nigerian corrupt system, it will be difficult not to get, to get someone that is upright and full of integrity. And then going on to that, what do you think about some of the names that have come out as potential substantive INEC chairman? May Agbamuche herself, Mbu herself, there was Professor Amukriton also put forward, his name has been bandied around. What do you think as to who would emerge as the next INEC chairman?
All right, it's important that you've raised quite a number of issues. I'll start with Geoffrey Unaji. The truth about it is that his resignation is a presumption of his guilt, even though, because the facts are there. There is a university authority that is saying we do not know whether or not this man, we do not know, and we know for certain that this man did not graduate from this school. And I said, and that same person, is insisting on presenting certificates and deceiving the Department of State Services, deceiving the president, deceiving an attempt to use our institutions to deceive the whole world. I think his punishment should be graver than that of Salisu Buhari if found culpable. And again, why should we call on independent corrupt practices commission to prosecute or to investigate? These things should be automatic. Why should we call on the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation to investigate? They should not forget that sovereignty of this country belongs to the people. At every material time, the government needs to explain to the people of Nigeria what's going on. And again, they should look at the history very well. I would deal with the issue of who the possible, the possible appointment of to the position of INEC chairman. To be honest with you, that is a prerogative of the president. But we must remind the president that look, there's a whole lot at stake here. You mustn't win your election, and the truth about it is that you must act like a statesman. You must act in the best interest of Nigeria. We haven't had a woman as INEC chairman before, and again, when we talk about institutional personalities, we're not talking about persons who were just mere directors in INEC. We're talking about persons who not only fulfill the basic requirements of not being members of political parties, but persons who, exhibit such integrity that we imbue the process with a lot of confidence. And that was what Jega did. And much credit should go to former President Goodluck Jonathan. And our president, as we speak, must take that as a precedent. Now, we will not also forget that in looking at this scenario, I understand that you must have a very sound understanding of the law, and which someone like Professor Joash Amopitan does have. But again, Mayor Bobuche is not in any way less in that. I mean, as a seasoned lawyer and as a National Electoral Commissioner without blemish, I think the woman stands tall. For once, the indices are there. Women have less record of recidivism and less involvement in corruption. So she should be given a shot. I think that the issues relating to Geoffrey Unaji are very, very grave, and I think that this it's not about him. There should be a thorough audit of not only political appointees, but all those persons who have forged results in the Federal Executive, Federal Secretariat of the Public Service in general.
I want to ask you a quick question. The only president that signed an electoral reform before an election was Goodluck Jonathan, and he lost that election. That was when we had card readers. Most presidents don't sign electoral reform. President Buhari in 2019 kicked the count down the road many times and didn't sign it because he was to participate in that election. Do you think President Tinubu will sign an electoral reform leading up to the 2027 elections? Briefly.
Well, you see, if you look at the provisions of Section 148 of the Electoral Act, which I believe that does empower the INEC chairman, the Independent National Electoral Commission as a commission in general, to make certain rules, regulations, and guidelines for the conduct of election and to give effect to the provisions of the Electoral Act. One would have expected that the INEC should have been more innovative in bringing out such guidelines that we improve the credibility of the elections. Once appointed, whoever that person is must assume that sum of independence and impartiality, and to be immune and from the influence of the president and the government. So in that case, we deal with the personality and consider whether this kind of person will always want to be politically correct, kowtowing to a president, being forever grateful that he was appointed, whereas he owes himself a legacy. The point is this: I answer your question, and your question is whether President Tinubu would carry out certain forms of electoral reforms that will undo him. I do not want to even think about that. If we have a truly independent and impartial INEC, that will make rules and regulations and follow them, not in the manner that Professor Mahmood deceived Nigerians. I believe that irrespective of whatever President Tinubu does with those regulations and that are upheld, I believe that we have a free and fair election, irrespective of the personality that is appointed.
Mr. Tietie, let's not dance around. It's a direct question. Do you think President Tinubu will sign in an electoral law before the 2027 election, yes or no?
I doubt. I very much doubt. But that's why I went to the answer and to telling you that, look, irrespective of what he does and what he doesn't do, the provisions of the independence and impartiality and the powers of INEC, whoever is appointed to that position, if he's indeed working in the national interest, it doesn't matter what President Tinubu does or he does not do. We may have, a free and fair election at the end of the day.
Thank you very much.